The movement aspects ideas related the animal rights movement, sometimes called the animal liberation, animal personhood, or animal advocacy movement, is a social movement which seeks an end to the rigid moral and legal distinction drawn between human and non-human animals, an end to the status of animals as property, and an end to their use in the research, food, clothing, and entertainment industries. All animal liberationists believe that the individual interests of non-human animals deserve recognition and protection, but the movement can be split into two broad camps. Animal rights advocates believe that these basic interests confer moral rights of some kind on the animals, and/or ought to confer legal rights on them. See, for example, the work of Tom Regan. Utilitarian liberationists, on the other hand, do not believe that animals possess moral rights, but argue, on utilitarian grounds, utilitarianism in its simplest form, advocating that we base moral decisions on the greatest happiness of the greatest number. That, because animals have the ability to suffer, their suffering must be taken into account in any moral philosophy. To exclude animals from that consideration, they argue, is a form of discrimination that they call speciesism. See, for example, the work of Peter Singer. Despite these differences, the terms animal liberation and animal rights are generally used interchangeably. Factional division has also been characterized as that between the reformist or mainstream faction and the radical abolitionist and direct action factions. The mainstream faction is largely professionalized and focuses on soliciting donations and gaining media representation. Actors in the reformist movement believe that humans should stop abusing animals. They employ activities that include moral shocks. It has been noted that the power of the animal rights movement in the United States is centralized in professionalized non-profit organizations that aim to improve animal welfare. The abolitionist faction believes that humans should stop using animals altogether. Gary Francione, a leader in abolitionism, formed his approach in response to the traditional movement's focus on policy reform. Members of the abolitionist faction view policy reform as counterproductive and rely on non-violent education and moral persuasion in their activities. They see the promotion of veganism as a means of creating an anti-speciesist culture and abolishing animal agriculture. The direct action or militant faction includes in its activities property damage, animal releases, intimidation, and direct violence, aiming to change society through force and fear. Animal rights actors often reject this faction, pointing to violence as a counterproductive tactic that invites repression and does not economically or politically challenge extant systems. Smaller factions include groups focused around faith-based animal rights theory and vegan anarchists, whose approach is characterized by a critique of capitalism on the grounds that it has led to mass non-human, human, and environmental exploitation. Such factionalizing, researchers have pointed out, is common to social movements and plays a role in sustaining their health. The animal rights movement traces back to the animal protection movement in Victorian England, which was initiated by aristocratic moral crusaders in response to the poor treatment of urban workhorses and stray dogs. Other early influences include Upton Sinclair's 1906 novel The Jungle, which drew attention to slaughterhouse operations. Henry Stevens' Salt's treatises on non-human animal rights, which drew from human abolitionist arguments for recognizing the personhood of people considered to be property, and the short-lived Fruitlands Agrarian Commune, which required its residents to eat a vegan diet. The contemporary movement is regarded as having been founded in the UK in the early 1970s by a group of Oxford University postgraduate philosophy students, now known as the Oxford Group. The group was led by Rosalind and Stanley Godlewitch, graduate students of philosophy who had recently become vegetarians. The Godlewitches met John Harris and David Wood, also philosophy graduates, who were soon persuaded of the arguments in favor of animal rights and themselves became vegetarian. The group began to actively raise the issue with preeminent Oxford moral philosophers, including Professor Richard Hare, both personally and in lectures. Their approach was based not on sentimentality, but on the moral rights of animals. They soon developed a range of powerful arguments in support of their views, so that Oxford clinical psychologist Richard Ryder, who was shortly to become part of the group, writes that, "Rarely has a cause been so rationally argued and so intellectually well armed. It was a 1965 article by novelist Bridget Brophy in the Sunday Times which was pivotal in helping to spark the movement. Brophy wrote, "The relationship of